What's up, guys? My name is Trevor. I am the student pastor here at Stonecreek, and we're so grateful for every single one of you. Unfortunately, we do not have service due to the coronavirus, but we have a service that we're kicking off for you. We have an incredible message from our kids' pastor, Jordan Ledwell, who will be talking about stepping out of our comfort zone. It's something that you need. It's something that you're going to hear. I believe God's going to speak through you and to you through this message. So tune in. But also, tonight only, March 11th, we will be having a discussion group at 6 p.m. on Instagram. So tune in to us. We look forward to hearing from you and can't wait to see you there.
What's up, Wake? How are we doing today? You guys excited about being here? Hey, listen, I know this is all online, so before you start scrolling or hitting the X button or whatever you got to do, I wore this really bright pink hoodie just for you so you would stop, hang out with us, and hear a little bit about what we have going on tonight at Beyond. Listen, we have an incredible series we've been talking about what God is doing in the life of Abraham, but more importantly, what God is doing in the life of this church. And I think that they're so tied in together about what Jesus wants to do through the life of Abraham, through your life. I think they're connected. I think that today, in just about 10 minutes, I'm gonna tell you about some really important things that you're gonna need to do. But before I get there, let me just, again, elephant in the room. I know it's bright. I've heard every joke, okay, I promise. Has it been charged yet? Yes, it has been charged. Does it have a mute button? No, it does not. I do, don't click it. But we do have a lot of different things that people make jokes about. And listen, the most important one is that you don't know how many highlighters had to die for this. You just don't. You'll never know. But one of the cool things about me, my name is Jordan Ledwell. I'm the kids pastor at Stonecreek Church. And one of the really, really cool things about me is that I have two amazing little boys. They are the best. And so I don't know if you saw this. If you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, you saw that my son recently learned how to ride a bicycle. And it was so exciting. You should have seen him pedaling. And about 5 minutes after he took the training wheels off of his bike, he was pedaling around our cul-de-sac. Now, when I say pedaling, he was doing a lot of falling. Like, to be honest with you, he fell a lot. I tried not to videotape all those moments because I wanted my son to look back and remember fondly those things, right? And not be like, I almost killed myself. But he was pedaling and he was just going around the loop, and every now and then he would fall over and he would cry, and I would help him set back up, and I'd be like, hey guy, you can do this. Like, no matter what, you've got to believe in this. Like, you just keep pedaling. And every now, like he had a really big problem trying to start. Like, he would pick the bike up, he would sit on it, he'd put his feet up on the pedals, and then he would just like freeze and stop. Because guess what? That was where he was the most comfortable. Because he knew that if he had at least one foot on the ground, he wasn't gonna fall. He wasn't gonna experience the pain. He wasn't gonna feel the hurt that he was gonna feel when he scraped his knee or he bumped his elbow. And so he knew that that was the most comfortable place for him. And so eventually, after lots of scrapes and cuts and crying and restarting, now he came home the next day. He was like, Dad, I told all my friends what it was like to ride that bike. And I was like, what did they say? He said, they were amazed. I was like, well, what did they say, Lachlan? He said, they said, wow. And what's incredible is even after all that pain, even after the things that he went through, trying something new was the best thing that could have happened to him. Because if he hadn't tried something new, guess what? He'd still be riding around the cul-de-sac with training wheels on his bike. He'd still be waiting for something new to happen, but he wouldn't have taken any steps to experience that. And so I wanted to go through a couple verses with you tonight about what it looks like in Hebrews and with Abraham. It says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Let's take just a quick second and pray. Dear God, thank you again for this word. Thank you for Abraham. Thank you for this story. I believe that this is gonna set some people free tonight. I believe this is gonna help us to move past some of these places where we've been standing on our bikes, waiting for something to happen, not wanting to get hurt or cut or bruised. But God, I pray that we would be able to move past that, move out of our comfort zones tonight. In your name, amen. Now, what's really cool about this verse is that it was in Hebrews, and it is way further on in the Bible. Like the story of Abraham is in Genesis, which is the very first book of the Bible, but the story of Hebrews way later on in the New Testament. A lot of people think Paul wrote the book of Hebrews. There's a lot of, back and forth about that. But no matter who wrote it, there's this portion called the Hall of Faith, where it talks about amazing heroes of the faith, and Abraham is listed here. And this is some of his portion. Can you throw that back up real quick? This is some of his portion where it says Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. Now, the first point I want to make is that, look, we are short-sighted as humans, but we play the long game. So we are short-sighted, but we play the long game. We can't see everything that God has planned for us. Abraham couldn't see all that God had planned for him. He couldn't see the final result. He was living in a tent with goats and sheep following him around. He didn't have a whole lot going on. But you know what? He did have his lifestyle. He was able to move around and see new places, but he stayed in like this, think of like a big zone where he would just move around in a circle because he had to keep his herd moving so they'd have water. He had to keep them moving so that they would have food. And if he stopped, he could be dead in the middle of the desert. But he also had a comfort zone. Think of it as a big circle where he had to travel in that space. And anywhere outside of that space was unknown. It was a bit of fogginess around that circle where he couldn't see anything outside of it. And so when God asked him to do something crazy, like leave that circle, that was a big deal. He was like, but wait, like, it's really important that right now I'm safe. I'm keeping my family safe. I'm keeping my friends safe. I'm keeping my herd safe because that's where all my money is. And he had to make sure that he was completely comfortable. But sometimes answering the call that God places on our lives, it means stepping out. It's still terrifying. Like, don't get me wrong. It's still ambiguous and dangerous and definitely uncomfortable. But what if it's better? What if taking our feet off of the pedals, getting a running start, and just pedaling hard after what God has in front of us, what if that is better than being comfortable? What if sitting in our comfort zone is the problem? What if sitting in our bed watching TikTok all night is really what's keeping us from being able to achieve something that's impossible? What if another game of Fortnite or if another long conversation on the phone with a friend is actually keeping us from experiencing God's best? Because if I'm being really honest, and I've experienced this myself, sometimes if we aren't careful, comfort can actually end up being our goal. Comfort, like the thing that we feel like, it may be like that you're comfortable, like pajamas, like maybe you have one of those onesies with like the unicorn, like I don't know. But whatever you've got, like maybe that's your safe place. Maybe that's your comfort zone. Maybe your comfort zone is your bed. Maybe it's a girlfriend or boyfriend. Maybe your comfort zone is who you are pretending to be online. Whatever it is, that comfort zone, I think, is holding you back from what God has that's best for you, is keeping you away from that. And so when I say we're short-sighted, I mean, we can't see all those things, and sometimes we let our temporary comfort keep us from long-term success. We don't play the long game. And if we don't play the long game, we're not gonna win. See, the feeling after a long day of work, the feeling after a completed school assignment, the finishing of an awesome soccer game or football game or karate match, guess what? That is the feeling that you get when you play the long game, when you put in the time and the effort and the practice and you pushed until you achieved something important. And that's called playing the long game. And it takes us out of our comfort zone more times than not. So today, my challenge for you is, are you playing the long game? Or are you short-sighted? Are you just trying to achieve momentary comfort? Another thing, if you throw those verses back real quick, another thing that's cool about this is that Abraham had a unique place, is that it says, by faith he went to live in the land of promise as in a foreign land, which I think is interesting because God's like, hey, here's a promise. If you go here, you're gonna feel important. You're gonna see success. You're gonna feel cared for. But it also says that he was in a foreign land. That means that it's possible to be completely in the will of God and still feel like an outsider. It means that it's possible to be doing exactly what God wants you to do and still feel like you're a weirdo as a result. Other translations say he was an alien, which I think is unique because a lot of times we feel like we should feel most ourselves when we're with people who follow Jesus, but the reality is that people who follow Jesus don't feel much like everyone else. They're outsiders. You know, it says this. It says that, yeah, we're homeless, but we have an inheritance. We're homeless, but we have an inheritance, which means that we are living in a foreign land. We don't belong here, but there's something that is promised to us that we don't have yet. It says that they were heirs with him of the same promise, that he was going to receive an inheritance. That's some fatherhood stuff right there, right? Like he was going to get something handed down to him that he hadn't seen yet. And so in these periods of time, our temporary obedience is going to land us in the land of inheritance. Our obedience in these times when we don't know what's going on, when Abraham stepped out of his circle into the next thing, then he's in this realm of mystery. He doesn't know what's there. But because he obeyed, because he stepped in, he now has an inheritance. He now has something that he can call his own. So maybe for you, it's stepping out of your bedroom. I know that sounds wild. Maybe this is a hard one. Maybe it's taking the thing that you're watching me on right now, probably your phone, and setting that aside and walking away and doing something meaningful and worthwhile. Maybe it means picking up the phone and stepping out of your comfort zone and inviting a friend to come hang out at Wake. Maybe it's inviting a friend to come hang out on Sunday and serve alongside of you. Maybe it's serving for the first time in a volunteer team. That could be what it looks like for you to step into your inheritance, to step out of your comfort zone, to walk into a place you've never been before. And that brings me to my last point, which I think is really important. We are earthbound, but heaven destined. That means that, look, this is not our home. We are aliens just like Abraham is, but we have something that's even better. And what's cool is Abraham, listen to this, he lived in a tent his entire life. The tent just moved around, right? He was a portable guy all the time. He lived in a U-Haul, right? He was moving around from town to town. He would move around from place to place in the desert in his tent. And guess what? His entire entourage would follow. Goats, sheep, wives, everybody, they all worked together as a big group and they just moved. I'm sure it was super slow. They moved super slow across the desert. What's crazy about that is he lived his entire life in a tent on earth. And God was sitting there saying, do you remember what Trevor said last week? You're going to have all these descendants. They're going to be like the grains of sand. They're going to be like the stars in the sky. And he's like, I live in a tent, God. Have you seen this thing? It's a tent. It's like a little teepee. I live there. The problem is that, yeah, that may be true, but God said, you're heaven destined. There's something even greater down the road. Take us back to that verse one more time. Here's what's crazy, and you gotta see this to believe it. It says, he was looking forward to this city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. You know what's crazy about that? Is that when Abraham saw a tent, he saw a temple. He saw something that had foundations. He saw something that was real and was not gonna go anywhere. What's crazy about that is that his entire life was just spent going places. Hey, guess we gotta go down to the creek again. The cows are almost dead, right? That was his entire life. But here he has this awesome opportunity to go from tent to temple in his mind to see that the designer and builder of that is God was preparing something even better than what he had. He saw the future. And so when we're talking about going beyond, it means moving from a city that does not have foundations, from a city that's made of tents, from a city that's made of cardboard boxes, to a city that has foundations, to a temple, to a place where one day Abraham was gonna worship God in spirit and in truth, to one day when Abraham would be standing beside of Jesus who he'd never met before, right? And he was gonna be able to celebrate the redemption that had occurred because of his faith. It's amazing the promise that God had given to Abraham. And for now, what's crazy is as part of Beyond, you get an opportunity to do what Abraham did. You're stepping beyond your comfort zone. You're walking into a place where you're like, you know what? I don't think a lot of people think that the now generation can be now generous. I just have this feeling. They think that you're short-sighted. They think that you don't play the long game. But let me tell you something today and tonight and whenever you're watching this video. You are important. You can change the world. You can go beyond because Abraham went beyond. He went before you. He's showing you that faith, that one step is all it takes. So let me challenge you. Try to take some money and give it to Beyond. Just try it. For the first time ever, take some steps of faith and jump into a volunteer team. For the first time ever, talk to Trev, talk to somebody about being part of home team. See what that means for you. Because I guarantee you, it will make a significant impact in the future. But I also promise you that standing in your comfort zone and waiting for God to do something is not gonna work out. Because God wants to do something in your life, but he wants you to take the first step. He wants you to step out. He wants you to follow the example of Abraham. And I think you can do that today.